Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped. Julian here, and this is an episode where I'm telling you some players that you should consider avoiding in drafts at their current ADP. By no means are these players bad players, but they're going too early in drafts in my opinion, and that's why you should be avoiding them at their current ADP. Before we get started, guys, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Still, more than half of you guys that watch this channel are not subscribed, and it would mean a lot to me if you did hit that subscribe button. Goal is to hit 6,000 subs this year, so every single one of you guys helps me get closer to that goal. And also, guys, if you do want to take your sport to the next level, consider subscribing to me on Patreon. Link is in the description below, and you get some nice perks, just like being able to DM me for questions whenever you want, and I do answer at the lowest tier, so that's pretty good. And then the highest tier also has a video call with me monthly if you wish to do so. Alright guys, let's jump into the content, and the first player that I think you should be avoiding this year in drafts is Andrei Kuzmenko. Now, why do I think we should be avoiding Andrei Kuzmenko? Well, for one thing, he's going at an ADP of 109.1, which is pretty early. And just last year, he had an overall incredible year, but an overall unsustainable year, like really, really unsustainable. Last year, his on-ice shooting percentage was 14.2%, which, if you guys know, should be close to 10%. Even 11% is fine, but 14.2% is very high. His individual shooting percentage was 27.3%, which was the highest in the league. He also averaged 1 secondary assist per 60 minutes, which is the absolute highest in the NHL. And let's not forget about his 36.8% power play shooting percentage, higher than Leon Draisaitl. Now, that's obviously some crazy stats that are not sustainable. Okay, so let's talk about how he actually did last year. 74 points in 81 games and finished between the 110th and 140th best fantasy player based on your league type. If he repeats that ADP might be worth it. But is he going to repeat that? Because I just gave you a whole bunch of reasons why what he did is completely unsustainable. Now, after you adjust his stats for some inflation, 30 goals and 28 assists is what I'm estimating for him this year. He ends up closer to the 150 to 200 range. So I would not draft him this early. And also, one thing that we did not like about Kuzmenko last year is that he was super inconsistent. Yeah, he would have crazy hot streaks, but he would also go on a few games in a row where he would do absolutely nothing. So Kuzmenko is definitely somebody that I'm avoiding this year. Next is my MANSCAPED must-avoid player of the video, Tyson Barrie. Once again, guys, MANSCAPED supports Fantasy Tips so much that they provided an exclusive offer for all of our listeners. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code word FANTASYTIPPED at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com with the code word FANTASYTIPPED. Feel like yourself again and take charge of your life with Manscaped. Now, why is Tyson Barrie my Manscaped must-avoid player of the video? Well, his ADP is just too damn high. He's currently being drafted at an ADP of 108.2, which is just insanely early for someone who doesn't have a power play 1 on his team, and that's the only thing that's ever really made him valuable in fantasy. Now, I have him ranked outside my top 50 defensemen, and I think realistically, he might be able to put up a point every 2 games playing on Nashville's PP2 and getting a decent amount of ice time elsewhere. But his peripherals are not really that great, so barring an injury to Roman Josi, he is nowhere near the value that this ADP would suggest. I would strongly consider avoiding him at this ADP. Next down this list is someone you've heard me talk about and rant about quite a bit, Adam Fox. Obviously, Adam Fox, amazing hockey player, right? He's super overrated in fantasy, though. Right now, he's the second defenseman off the board in fantasy drafts. Personally, I have him ranked around the 9th best defenseman. Yes, he's going to score a whole bunch of points. We know that. But his peripherals are not really that good. And that's why you really should not be drafting him that high, guys. You really are wasting a pick if you're drafting Adam Fox at an ADP of 29.3. He deserves to be going quite a bit later than that. There's so many good options at that range. Do not be grabbing Adam Fox. If you really want a defenseman at that range, Roman Josi is a fine option and will do a whole lot better than Adam Fox over the course of the season. Next guy I have on this list is Connor Bedard with an ADP of 39.9. Obviously, I'm super excited for Bedard. I bought a jersey here. Like, you can't say I'm a Bedard hater or anything like that. I'm super excited for him. The thing is, he's being drafted insanely early. Personally, I have him ranked this year in the 80s somewhere, and that's more than double what his current ADP is right now. And personally, I actually projected some pretty solid and tough numbers to hit for him. Like 80 points is what I projected. So if he hits that with some okay peripherals, he's probably going to finish around the 80th best player, you know? So an ADP of 39.9 is just so high for a rookie that we have yet to see in the NHL on such a bad team who's going to get a terrible plus minus with not that many great players around him. It's just too much, and it's too early. People are obviously excited to draft him, but you should be avoiding him in your draft. Next guy on this list is another super overrated New York Ranger for fantasy. He's got an ADP of 35.4. That is Artemi Panarin. Now, Artemi Panarin is a fantastic player, right? He's one of the best in the league. However, his lack of peripherals, his lack of shooting really hurts his fantasy value. I have him ranked this year as the 40th best forward. His ADP is 35.4, and I have him as the 40th forward, not 40th best player overall. Yeah, he's not ranked very well at all. There's quite a bit of players ahead of him on the depth chart that I'd much rather be drafting at this ADP than Artemi Panarin. I think drafting him here at this ADP is a mistake because there are such good players. You could be grabbing like a JT Miller who has so many great peripherals, gives you a super safe floor around this ADP. The next guy on this list is someone that me and Max disagree upon, but in my opinion, there is no way he's repeating that incredible year that he had last year where he scored over 100 points. He's going at ADP right now of 33.8, and if he repeats that season from last year, he'll definitely hit that ADP. However, I just can't see it happening, right? 39 secondary assists was the absolute most in the league. 0.66 secondary assists per 60 minutes is very, very high. He shot a career high 27% on the power play. His career average is 15%, which is a 6-goal drop minimum just on the power play. His overall shooting percentage last year was 18.4% compared to his normal 12.2%, and his on-ice shooting percentage was 16%. And 13% would be more normal for him for the players he plays with, but 16% is just insanely high. So I see a lot of regression from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and I currently have him ranked as the 43rd best forward. He's currently being ranked as the 33rd best player. I'm not touching him there, guys. It's just too much of a risk for me. And yes, I've heard the excuse that, yeah, Edmonton's power play was the best in the league. Obviously, he's going to keep being great, and he's going to keep doing well. Yeah, he's going to keep doing great. But that best power play of all time in the NHL is still probably going to be very good. It's probably not going to be as good as last year because there's pretty much nowhere to grow from there. But Nugent-Hopkins is still definitely going to have a great year. I'm just not expecting 100 points. I'm expecting closer to 85. The next guy on this list is Hampus Lindholm. And Hampus Lindholm hadn't gone in more than 34 points in a year since 2015. And last year, he accomplished an amazing 53 points. And also had the best plus minus in the league with plus 49. So that definitely helped his stats last year. Now this year, Boston is a significantly worse team. For one thing, that plus minus is going to decrease significantly. A decent amount of his points also came when he was playing on the power play 1 for the first couple of months of the season last year when McAvoy was injured. That won't be the case this year. I believe McAvoy will probably quarterback that power play the entire year. So while I still think he has a pretty good year, I think the ADP is just way too high for me. Check out my top 50 defensemen video if you haven't already to see where he ranks among all defensemen. Next guy I have on this list is Jamie Benn of the Dallas Stars, and he achieved the highest shooting percentage of his entire career last year with 17.4%. And obviously, since he's aging, and until last year was getting worse with age, that kind of shooting percentage is not going to happen again next year. Now that on-ice shooting percentage is also quite unsustainable with a 15.5% on-ice shooting percentage. Normally, it's a lot lower than that, guys, so expect that to regress to the mean a little bit. And let's not forget that 45 assists last year was tied for the 3rd most he ever got in his career. Yes, he might still get top power play with studs like Robertson and Hintz and Pavelski. That being said, I don't think he's going to have even remotely as good of a year this year, guys. An ADP of 71.3 is just way too early for me. There's so many great players that you could be drafting around that range instead of Jamie Benn. The next guy on this list is Erik Karlsson, and sure, there's a lot of Erik Karlsson truthers out there that think he's going to get 100 points this year. I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that he's not going to hit 100 points once again this year. There's just not as much room for him on the ice. In Pittsburgh, he's not going to be on the ice constantly like he was in San Jose. He was pretty much the only good player they had last year. Pittsburgh, there's a lot more good players, good quality players, and yeah, he's still going to get top power play time. He's still going to have probably a nice 80 to 85 point season, but he's not hitting 100 points again. Now, he's a number 3 ranked defenseman, and I have him currently ranked at number 11. To hit his number 3 ranking, he's going to have to hit 100 points again, which just doesn't seem feasible. And his peripherals aren't really that great, so even if he somehow does hit 100 points again, he's going to just barely pay off this ranking. So personally, avoid Erik Karlsson. There's some great defensemen, going later than him in drafts that are much better value. The next guy on this list is Jeremy Swayman. And I already told you guys not to draft Ullmark in my Scary Studs video, and I'm telling you guys not to draft Jeremy Swayman either. They're going to be splitting the starts 50-50, and yeah, Boston was a great team last year. They're not going to be as good this year, and just someone who's only starting half the games to be being drafted this high is absolutely crazy. His stats weren't that amazing last year that you should be drafting him this high. Around the same ADP, UC Saros, my number 1 ranked goalie, is going in that range. So that's a much, much, much better draft option. Saros is going to be starting almost every game for Nashville, whereas Swayman is only starting every second game for Boston. And it's just a huge difference right there. I think that Swayman is being way overdrafted. I have him as his 26th best fantasy goalie this year, just because he's not going to be starting that many games. And his stats are also, not all that great. And I don't think Boston's going to be as good this year either. A lot of reasons why I've knocked Swayman down quite a bit. And he just really should not be being drafted at this current ADP. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed the content today, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching all the way through, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.